Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to tell you about some theories. So we're going to make this as exciting as possible and let me know if you have any questions, but really try to think about the material I'm going to present. All right, so let's go. We got the elaboration likelihood model and cognitive dissonance theory. This is really just meant for a review and we can talk about it more in class if you have questions. All right, so the elaboration likelihood model. This has got a fancy name for a very fun and relatively simple idea. Okay, so let's break down these words. So first you have, actually no, sorry, we're not going to break down the words first. Okay, let's start with just going shopping, right? You're going shopping. Your list includes toothpaste, milk, and a new television. Which purchase is going to require the most thought? And before you say, yes, there's 50 kinds of toothpaste, haha, I know, but we usually go and get the same brand over and over. I know for myself, I like the, is it Colgate, Colgate Total? My milk, I head right to the almond milk aisle. But if I was going to buy a new television, I would have to do a lot of research, think about the purpose of it, the price point that I want to spend, the location that I want to purchase, put the TV once I purchase it. I might even get into some of the technical specs of the TV. So wouldn't you agree the TV would require the most thought? So um, the elaboration likelihood model says that there are two ways that we process information and therefore make decisions, right? So we'll get back to our example in a second. Let's break down the words now. So elaboration is how much the individual thinks about arguments that are contained in the communication. So how much you think about them. And the likelihood, well, what's likelihood? The probability that an event will occur. Okay? And the model is basically just the theory. So the elaboration likelihood model says that there's two ways that we process and respond to information. And they've come up with these fancy names. One is the central root and one is the peripheral root. So let's get into what those mean and how we can apply them to our example. Oh, sorry, let's go back. Um, so according to the ELM, as they call it, the peripheral root happens when you make decisions based on very superficial or automatic information. So, for example, I go to the store, I know my brand of toothpaste, I get it, and I don't think about it very much. Um, let's say, you're watching a TV commercial and the advertiser says, okay, 9 out of 10 doctors recommend this brand of, I don't know, this brand of bread to eat. Who knows? Um, and you say, okay, I'll get the bread based on their recommendation. You're really not thinking very deeply about this decision. On the other hand, the central root says that when you receive information, depending on what the decision is, that you might think more deeply about it, right? The information goes kind of in the center of your brain. That's how I like to think of it. And you think about the different arguments, the fors and against why you should do something. You tend to just think more deeply about a decision that you're going to make. So going back to our example, you would probably have to consider a lot more factors when you're purchasing the television, and maybe you'd be more likely to use central root processing. So let's just look at some more examples. Anyone heard of Oprah's book club, right? So Oprah, I believe, recommends a book and lots of people read it. Why? Well, Oprah recommended it. So are they using the peripheral route or the central route? Well, I'd argue they're using the peripheral route because they're basically just saying, you know what? So and so recommended it. I trust her, so I'm going to go ahead and read this book. They're not really thinking about the book's plot or the cost or anything like that. They're just going off her recommendation. Let's see. Let's look at political candidates. So political candidates a lot of times appeal to us based on peripheral processing. So campaign slogans. We have Trump's "Make America Great Again." We had Obama's "Yes We Can," And these are nice, neat, packaged ideas that can appeal to people who aren't sitting down to think deeply about the policies that they're offering. Political candidates might even, pull in celebrities to help advertise or help promote their campaign, right? Um, Same thing with homes for sale. Like when you want to buy a home, you might be persuaded by things that are very um, superficial, right? So so sellers might do very superficial things to make the house more attractive and make you not think so deeply about your decision. Although I would argue a home is probably more of a central route because you've got to think a lot about the finances, a lot about the location, the space, all of that. Moving. So I might put it in the more central route process. Okay, so why are we learning about this? Well, this is a general theory that applies to persuasion. Sorry, that's my dog barking. Um, and how you could use this in public relations. Well, when designing a campaign, you might want to think about whether your audience is likely to be persuaded by peripheral or central route processing. So, would a celebrity work best to help endorse your product or campaign? Let's say you are advocating a cause like global warming. Would it be better to have a scientist explaining the causes of global warming? This person might appeal more to people who want to think deeply about the ideas. And just to note, people are motivated by different things. So some people, because they care a lot about an issue, are going to be more likely to use the central route. And people who don't care a lot about an issue or maybe lack the comprehension or understanding of an issue are more likely to be persuaded by the peripheral processing. But the longer lasting processing is the central root processing. Peripheral processing tends to have very short term effects. So you might want to keep that in mind. And I think that's the last slide about the ELM. That was a very, very brief overview. We could easily spend an hour talking about the elaboration likelihood model. Oh, I have one more example for you. So here is a an ad. This is by the CDC, which is the Central Center for Disease Control, and this ad is about HPV vaccine. So take a look at this ad. I'll give you a second. Okay. You notice they have a rather young looking girl. Um, she is, I don't know what she's thinking about, but then you have this quote that says, if there were a vaccine against cancer, wouldn't you get it for your kid? Oh my gosh. HPV vaccine is cancer prevention. Talk to the doctor about vaccinating your 11 to 12-year-old sons and daughters against HPV. So, would you say that this health campaign is using more of a central or a peripheral mode of getting at you or getting at the audience? I would argue that it has a few elements of both, but that it leans more toward a peripheral route. Why? They want to appeal to their audience with a picture of a cute girl, kind of appealing to parents who might think of their own sons and daughters. They don't have much information about what HPV is or how the vaccine works or where to get it. They do have a website at the bottom, so that's a little bit of the central route. Like if you want to know more, you might go there for more information. But overall, this is going to appeal to someone who just wants a quick and dirty, look at maybe getting an HPV vaccine, like kind of just to get people aware of the idea. So, all right, let's move on to cognitive dissonance theory. So I hope I'm keeping everybody awake. Hello, hello, hello. We're going to talk about cognitive dissonance theory. I don't have a fun acronym for this, maybe CD. You may have learned about this in your psychology classes, but let's talk about it anyway. What does cognitive dissonance mean? Well, it means that you have incongruity among thoughts or mental elements, right? So you have the word cognitive, which is thought, and dissonance, which means that you're not you're not in sync. So we can say that it's a negative, unpleasant state that occurs when a person holds two cognitions that are psychologically inconsistent with each other. So let's take a look at some examples, right? Well, has anyone identified with this one? I am on a diet, but I just ate two pieces of cake. Or I should be working on my class project, but I really want to go to the movies. Or Sarah, who is married, is contemplating a rendezvous with Tom, right? Can you think of an example when you may have felt two incongruent thoughts, felt dissonance? So this theory really exemplifies the power of self-persuasion. In other words, it says that we persuade ourselves actually because we don't like dissonance, right? When we experience dissonance, we want to take steps to reduce it. So how do you try to reduce dissonance? You justify your actions, you rationalize. And humans are famous for rationalizing all the time. Okay? Um, you can also change your attitude or behavior. So something has to change to make sure that you reduce the dissonance of your thoughts. Okay. Um, so let's look at how it's been applied. There's something called internal versus external justification. There was a study where the study participants completed a really boring task. And then at the end of the task, they had to tell the next participant a lie. And they had to tell them that they really enjoyed doing the task, that the task was just amazing and fun to do. And the researchers gave them either $1 or $20 to tell this lie. So then the original participants completed a survey about how much they liked the task that they actually did. So who do you think said they liked the task more? The ones who received $1 or the ones who received $20? Well, those who received $1 needed internal justification for the inconsistency. They needed to bring their attitude in line with their public behavior. So the people who earned $1 said that they liked the task even more. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so how can you apply this to in a context of motivating other people to change their behaviors? Again, this is something general to keep in mind when you're designing campaigns. Um, but let's look at the example of a parent who wants to pay their couch potato child to run or swim laps. Will paying the child change her attitude toward exercising? No, probably not, right? Because they don't have that cognitive dissonance. They can justify the fact that they're running or swimming laps because they're getting paid. It might help in the short term, but it's not going to help change long-term behavior. Okay, let's look at one more example. So imagine you're giving a speech to young adults to use condoms when they have sex. Most of your audience who's answered a survey does not consistently use condoms. Which gives internal justification? Which is a more persuasive argument according to cognitive dissonance theory? Well, we could say A, failure to use condoms inevitably results in unintended pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections, including AIDS. Or you could say, if you think of yourself as a responsible adult, you'll use condoms to protect yourself and your partner. If you said B, you're right. Why? If you say A, people have this external justification for using condoms. Terrible things will happen if you don't use condoms, right? Versus B, this is an internal justification, right? So it's more long lasting. If the listeners think of themselves as responsible adults and don't use condoms, there's a conflict between self image and behavior, and it's going to elicit this cognitive dissonance. And people will do anything to get rid of this dissonance. So, how could you apply this to PR? You could persuade others to make a public commitment to your cause, make them announce that they support the Me Too movement, and they'll start to think of themselves as supporting it. So, can you think of any other applications for cognitive dissonance theory? I'm going to end it there. I'm almost at the 15-minute mark. So, this is the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed.